All right, jumping in, our topic today is future-proofing your marketing strategy in the age of AI. There are a lot of folks out there that are talking about all these wonderful capabilities that we have as marketers and how they change our world from a tactical perspective, but there's not a lot of people talking about how this impacts our strategies as marketers, and that's what we want to dig in today. Little bit of housekeeping. As always, please do post your questions into the chat. You can do that whether you're on the live stream or if you're coming at us through the webinar. Either way, we'll get to those questions either live as we're going. If not, we'll for sure get to them at the end. And a copy of these slides will be sent to you, so don't worry about taking screen captures. You'll get the slides. Don't stress. A little bit about me. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO here at Brilliant Metrics. I've got about 20 years of experience, started out in software development, ended up moving over to marketing about 15 years ago, and still occasionally dabble in code. I love public speaking. I love teaching with UWM School of Continuing Ed. And on the personal front, I'm married with 3 beautiful children. Okay, Brilliant Metrics, we are a B2B digital marketing agency. What sets us apart from other agencies is that our clients not only rely on us to help them do things, but help them also continuously improve, whether that's the systems they're using, the technology, whether that's the processes or knowledge, training. We're helping them continuously get to the next level, ultimately improving their capabilities and ultimately improving the revenue that marketing generates. With that shameless plug done, let's dive in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the impact of AI on both halves of the coin, both the marketer and the consumer, and how those two things interplay. We'll talk about the impact of AI on content supply and some second order consequences of that. The impact of AI on content demand, what the byproducts are of being able to scale things that previously were not scalable, and then kind of round things up with the death of content marketing, at least as we know it. So jumping into AI's impact on marketers and consumers, there are really two sides to the impact coin here. Artificial intelligence, and specifically generative AI, because there's a lot of different kinds of AI. We're focused today on the generative AI, the Chat GPT, and all of the products that are using similar engines behind the scenes. They enhance marketer capabilities. They allow us as marketers to be able to do things we weren't able to do, or to do things more cheaply or at scales we weren't able to do them before. And when I say us, that means us, but also all of our competitors, as well as the media. So anybody who's generating content out there, anybody who is engaged in sales or marketing activity, have been given a superpower, and that changes the competitive landscape when it comes to attention and when it comes to just, outright competing against our competitors. The flip side of that, though, is consumers. Consumers are beginning to adopt generative AI and other artificial intelligence tools, and that changes their buying behavior. And that's the other consideration to make. Where it gets particularly fascinating is when you think about it in terms of how those two things impact each other. It's pretty easy for me to sit up here and think through what the impact of generative AI is on marketers and what these new superpowers mean for our capabilities. It's pretty easy for me to sit up here and think about what mass adoption of Chat GPT and Bard and Google's generative search experience, what that might lead to for consumer behavior. Where it gets complicated is that as consumers change their habits, marketers change their tactics. As marketers change their tactics, consumers change their behaviors. And so if you think about this in terms of pendulums and AI providing some momentum or push to that pendulum in a particular direction, it's pretty easy to picture where that's going to go for either the consumers or the marketers. But if you've ever seen a physics demonstration of what happens when you connect two pendulums together, you see that when one pendulum is driving the other pendulum, The results are literally described by the science community as chaos. It becomes next to impossible to predict where that dot at the end of that pendulum is going. And that's exactly the situation that we have today, where changes in marketers' behavior are going to drive changes in consumer behavior. Changes in consumer behavior are going to drive changes in marketers' behavior. And then there's third and fourth order consequences where, the changes that the marketers did to drive the changes in the consumers will also drive back changes to marketers. These are not two independent situations. And I'm able to go out on a limb pretty far today and talk about at least how we're advising our clients to adapt to this. But know that this is a changing landscape and that these impacts are really going to be chaos and really hard to predict because one feeds the other, feeds the other, feeds the other. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into content marketing and sort of lay the groundwork for why content marketing will change permanently, and not necessarily in the ways that a lot of marketers are talking about as far as like reducing the friction and yay, this is a great world of now we can produce content at scale that we couldn't before. I'm going to bring you back to your microeconomics class. If you were so privileged to take a microeconomics class in college, and talk a little bit about supply and demand curves. So the way a supply demand curve, just as a review, because, well, most of us don't remember this from when we took it in school. On the left-hand side, you have price over here, which indicates the higher prices at the top and lower prices at the bottom. And on the bottom, you have quantity. So in the context of content, when we talk about price, we're not necessarily talking about dollar price, but we're talking about the value that a piece of content provides the marketer and the consumer in a content marketing situation. So what is that value to both? And in theory, those should move parallel to each other. If a piece of content is really valuable to the consumer, then that makes it inherently very valuable to the marketer. On the bottom, we have the quantity, which is the amount of content that is produced. And in normal supply demand, you have, as your quantity is lower, you have scarcity, which drives up demand and drives up price. And as quantity is higher, it becomes commoditized and the price goes down. A standard supply curve goes the opposite direction. And this is something I never really fully understood when I was taking economics, but essentially as quantity increases, the price that you can get for that content, and that it increases as well, or at least the value to the supplier, in this case, the marketer, increases. At some point in the middle, you have an equilibrium point. This is the point at which the suppliers are willing to produce content at a given quantity, and the value that you're going to get for that content at a given price. What happens when we introduce generative AI? Well, generative AI brings the friction or the amount of effort to produce content, in some cases, to near zero. If you can set up a string of a structure of technology that one system feeds the other, you could essentially have the AI on its own posting blog posts, or all you have to do is feed into it topics to your blog. This will inevitably result across the board in an increase of 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. We're talking orders of magnitude in the amount of content that is available on the internet on any given topic. When that happens, our supply-demand curve shifts. Our supply moves down and to the right. This means we have a new point of equilibrium. And I believe this is not giving this full justice, because really this supply curve probably shoots way the heck over here, right? It's sliding far to the right as that increase in content on the internet increases at that magnitude. That will inherently decrease the value of the piece of content, each piece of content. So we have that much more content being produced at that much lower of a value. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means that if we're relying on organic search as a discovery mechanism, we're going to have some problems here because our content that we're putting our effort into producing, even if our effort is less, it becomes one piece of content in a massive sea of AI generated content. Getting people to discover our piece of content versus somebody else's becomes next to impossible. If your content is discovered, it'll be hard to make it stand out, either because that person now has an opportunity to consume 15 articles on the same topic. How does yours stand out? Or because they have to choose between 15 articles. How does yours stand out? We'll talk about some of the solutions to this issue and supply shift in a moment, but let me jump over to demand. On the demand side, Google is currently rolling out something called Search Generative Experience, or SGE. You can go into labs.google.com and turn it on for yourself to see what it looks like. But they've clearly articulated this is going to be everywhere. And you'll notice I did have to hit expand on something to make the screen look this way. There is not a single search result on this page when I search for how do I write a good blog post when Search Generative Experience is live. They're there, they're just pushed down to the bottom. In some cases, the paid results are up on top, followed by the AI results, but you will not find an organic result above the artificial intelligence answer to your question. This is if I'm still even going to search. And if you ask around, you will find that, granted, they're still fairly early adopters, a lot of consumers have moved to asking questions like this, not to Google or to Bing, but instead asking questions like this to ChatGPT. And if you take a look at the Siris and the Alexas of the world right now, marrying that technology with the technology of a ChatGPT is just right around the corner, to the point that you can have a voice activated or text activated digital assistant sitting on your desktop. Microsoft is baking this into Windows and future versions of Windows. We'll find, I'm sure, the same thing baked into Apple as well, where we can now just interact with our computer and ask our computer questions instead of having to go to a search engine. This will result in an inherent shift in the demand curve, because now the demand for content on an actual website drops, at least for certain types of queries. Consumers will no longer use search engines and the websites that they link to answer a whole range of questions they currently use those tools to answer. When demand drops, you notice our price drops yet again. Now the value of any individual piece of content is that much less, because there are fewer people seeking content on the web. They're getting their answers from the generative AI directly. This brings us to talk about the 3 different query types. When somebody hits a search engine today, they are looking to essentially resolve one of 3 needs. If their query is informational, they're looking to retrieve information. We recently had our dishwasher break, and so these are some of the actual queries that I typed into search engines over the course of the last week. Top dishwasher brands, how to choose a dishwasher, average dishwasher price. I need information. I'm going to take either the result that Google gives me as just an answer, or I'm going to bounce off to another website to go and read their answer to my question. There are navigational queries. This is where the user, your consumer, needs to get somewhere. Usually these are branded websites they're trying to get to, but it could be a particular section or a tool or utility on a website that they know of already. The point is they know the name of the thing they're trying to get to. They just need to get there, and they don't want to have to guess at the domain. So I searched for Best Buy to go and get the price for the dishwasher I was looking at on Best Buy. I searched for ABT for the same reason. I searched for Consumer Reports to get some comparisons on the models I was considering. I knew those brand names off the top of my head and knew to search for them. And then finally, you have transactional. This is where I want to take an action, where your consumer actually wants to do something on the web. And that means they're searching for either a tool or a utility, or they're searching with a verb, like I want to buy a Frigidaire dishwasher in Milwaukee. When we look at informational queries, these are the first to go. These, you might as well consider these dead when it comes to developing new content for SEO. The search behavior of your consumer will move to AI assistants, and these are the easiest queries for AI to generate. So your content will be one in a sea of thousands of other pieces of content. Any content that you produce that addresses an informational query needs to be produced with a different distribution or discovery channel in mind. Organic search will not drive traffic to this page at some point in the very near future, at least not enough traffic to make it worthwhile to produce. When it comes to navigational queries, these are still going to be around. These will survive, but these only work for you if your audience knows you by name and knows to seek you out by name. They're not going to stumble on your brand in the process of their own discovery or their own exploration of their needs or problems. A lot of that will happen offline or outside of the realm of search and your website or your competitor's website in the AI assistant. If they know to seek you out by name, though, you still win on the navigational type of queries, and it shouldn't be too hard to rank for your own brand name. But it means a renewed emphasis on brand recall and association of your brand with the problems you solve. That type of brand building is something that a lot of digital marketers have gotten away from over the course of the last 5-10 years, as the focus has been much more on either content or going after intent. The third type of query is transactional. And this is where you have the most opportunity as a marketer today, both from the standpoint of what sort of utility can you offer that an AI assistant can't easily offer. So the example I used in my dishwasher example is if I want to repair or replace calculator. That's the kind of utility that I could probably put in all the information about how much I paid for my dishwasher and how much money I put into it and how old it is. And does ChatGPT think I should buy a dishwasher or repair my dishwasher? But I'd rather get an actual tool that's purpose-built to do that. There's utility and value that you can provide in the form of tools, or maybe it's a PDF printable that I can't ask ChatGPT to generate yet. That sort of value in utility or physical good that cannot be produced by an AI assistant. And then on the other end, when it's actually time to buy or get quotes or submit an RFP or whatever it might be, those types of queries are still worth optimizing for, whether they are with your brand or whether they are just generic intent to purchase. So if I want to buy a Frigidaire dishwasher in Milwaukee, what is your B2B, corollary to that type of query? And does your website currently rank for it? If not, that's a good place to put your SEO time and effort and money. Ultimately, as you go to produce content, you're going to want to make sure that you have some strategy for that content discovery that goes above and beyond organic search. Really, you have two options here. The red pill option is to pivot away from anything that would be commoditized content and move towards content that is opinionated, that is strongly branded, that is unique in voice and in content. These are, contrarian positions that you can take as a brand that a lot of brands are just plain afraid to stick their neck out on. But this is the kind of content that people will actually subscribe to because it's novel, it's entertaining, it's interesting, it's engaging, and you can build a subscriber base to deliver that content, and you won't be reliant on it being discovered through search and social. We'll talk about social in a minute. The other option is always paid. Remember that search generative experience that Google's rolling out. The screenshot I had showed the AI output first, but in many of my tests, the paid search results are always above that AI generated content, at least a few of them. When that's the case, you can pay to be clicked on instead of them reading the AI output if you're good at crafting the headline. But for many of us, a lot of the content that we're producing right now for organic search, it's just not good enough at converting traffic to make it worthwhile to pay for that traffic. And we'll talk about organic social as well, but a lot of what we're pushing out on organic social isn't good enough at producing revenue to make it worthwhile to pay to push out on organic social. So the paid pill won't work in many cases with the content you're producing today, and you're back to a pivot in the type of content you're producing. In this case, content that clearly lights the way for your buyer to become a customer. Let's talk a little bit about noise and the impact of noise on marketing, and how noise is a problem in a post-ChatGPT world. Previously, if I wanted to craft one-to-one bespoke communications, whether that's me as a salesperson crafting an email or me as a marketer slaving away inside my marketing automation system to create the most personalized experience I can, it was a high effort, high return operation. That's not true anymore. After AI, we have tools, akin to the robotic CNC machine producing what was a hand-carved headboard can now just be cranked out without any human interaction. The same thing is true for us as marketers and for their sales corollaries in producing that one-to-one bespoke communication. There are tools like Lead IQ here, which will create that one-to-one messaging. It will research that person's LinkedIn profile and craft it based on what they've recently posted or what's in their profile, what school they went to, etc. This will take what has been a problem with email marketing after the introduction of tools like outreach.io and just the inundation of junk email into every executive's inbox, and amplify it tenfold. If your texts, if your emails, if your in-mails weren't cutting through the noise before, well, you're really screwed now, because the amount of noise that will be produced as more and more marketers and salespeople wire up these artificial intelligence generative AI machines to a list of prospects and a particular problem or opportunity to explore with those contacts and hit go, the worse it's going to get. And just like when Outreach first launched and people started their outbound email sequences and automating that, they found they were getting great returns. The marketers who are early, or the salespeople and RevOps people that are early adopters to these generative AI tools will get great returns as well, which will cause the sea of other people to jump on board. And next thing you know, these channels become unusable, especially for those of us on the marketing side trying to send one-to-many personalized emails. Where I think this will go is I think we're moving towards a whitelist future. There was a while back, before the spam filters got pretty good, where you would occasionally run across email inboxes that had to, senders had to be whitelisted. I think we're going to come back to that. I think that marketing emails will, unless explicitly allowed through, will end up bouncing in sort of a soft bounce sort of way, saying, I'm sorry, you're not whitelisted, or entirely new channels will pop up. A lot of organizations have moved to Teams and Slack for the majority of their communication, and some people don't check their inboxes even every day anymore. I think there will be further migrations towards these closed communication tools where you can opt the people you do need to communicate with instead of the default being that person's let into your inbox unless you block them. The same thing or a similar thing is going to happen on the organic social side. As people wire generative AI up to their corporate and even personal social accounts, the algorithms are just going to have to throw away that much more content. And so what your audience will see will just be the tip of the iceberg of what's produced out there now that more and more and more and more decent content is produced at scale. As marketers, it means it will become almost impossible to produce things at a quality level consistently enough with virality, a sufficient virality to break through the algorithm, because the algorithm just has to be that much stricter. And organic reach will be, if you're relying on organic reach right now, it's time to start laying some plan Bs. I think community, or not that community, I think community is the answer. I think that it's at least an answer. If you build communities out on the web using Discord, Slack, or some of the dedicated community tools like Mighty, you're going to net a smaller but far more engaged audience. And if you're smart about who's in that audience and they can recommend your product or service, you can get some follow-on word of mouth out of that audience, as well as nurturing and retaining and engaging prospects and customers all the way through the buyer's journey. Community is harder, certainly, but building an online community of your raving fans is one way to prevent the limitations in discovery of your content from hampering your marketing efforts in 2024. So let's sum up some of these changes here. On the content side, your content will not be discovered. At least that's the risk. I'll go through the risks and some of the mitigation strategies. In the future, your content will not be discovered because it's insignificant in a massive sea of AI generated content. The way that you get around that is by creating opinionated, strongly branded content that hooks subscribers. People that are opting into receiving your content, possibly double opting in to receive your content, because you've got to break through some whitelisting structure in these communication tools as we're flooded with these communications. On the search side, informational content doesn't play a role in organic search in 2024. If you produce it, you're going to be one of, however many competitors producing content that solves the same searcher's need. And that's if you're lucky and the AI driven generative AI search experience doesn't just answer the query right there without driving any traffic to any website. The way around this is to stop focusing your SEO and content generation efforts on informational queries and shift towards utility and making sure that you're capturing anybody who has intent to take action and buy, and focusing your SEO optimization on getting your site to rank for those queries, because I'm not going to be able to buy things via the generative AI yet, for a while. And certainly for a lot of our industries, which are B2B, a little bit more custom, many of them are services, ever will I be able to buy that stuff through a search engine's generative AI. Through your generative AI at some point, yes, but through a search engine's, no. When it comes to email and SMS, this is an arms race or a cat and mouse game between AI driven tools that are going to do things at scale that weren't doable at scale before, and the filters. Ultimately, I think it doesn't matter how good your promotions tab filter is, the volume of this will lead people to move to channels that they can more control, and they aren't getting inundated. We're hitting a breaking point, and this AI is just going to push us over the line. On the organic social side, something similar will happen, only instead of a whitelist, the algorithms are going to limit who's going to receive what content. Either way, the answer is one of two: either build or join communities. Communities are opt-in channels you control. The value is not just driven you have user-generated content through peers sharing information. There's a lot of benefits to a community. It allows people to feel like they're a part of something. There's, Mark Schaefer has some great books on this topic. Go and check out his stuff. The other option is to just leverage opt-in and make sure that your content and your opt-in experience is good enough to not just get that first opt-in where, yes, I signed up for a webinar, so now I'm receiving your emails every month, to I really want your emails and I'm willing to whitelist you to get them into my inbox. And maybe it's not even emails. It could be whatever channel replaces email if email becomes unusable and another channel pops up to take its place. So that's kind of the direction that we're guiding our clients. There's some other aspects of AI we didn't get to today that maybe we'll get to in a future webinar. I'm sure I'm going to be wrong on some percentage of this, as will you, and whatever assumptions you make about the future. But now is not the time to stand still. Now is the time to lay the groundwork and plan and double down on the things that will work. It never hurts to refine your brand. It never hurts to build a strong brand position. That is one of the best things you can do to defend yourself against an onslaught of lookalike content in generative AI. It never hurts to build stronger, deeper opt-in channels with your audience. So you're not going to be wrong in taking these left turns here on some of your existing marketing efforts. And I think you'll be ahead of your competitors if you do take these steps. While they're cranking out more and more and more and more generative AI content, you're going to be one step ahead in creating experiences that will actually produce a positive ROI in this post-ChatGPT world. With that, I will open things up to questions. Please post your questions into the chat. Joe asks, the SGE within Google reminds me a lot of Google's historical rich snippets. He says he always looked at rich snippets as a double-edged sword. It's great to rank, but traffic doesn't always go to your website, which is absolutely true. How do you recommend rating content to rank for AI, such as SGE, or is it still too early? It is a bit early. I think this is going to be a whole industry in and of itself. But the key is identifying those queries that you can get your brand to be mentioned. I think this is part traditional PR. If you get press mentions of your brand, that will feed the generative eye probably more than your content on your website. But certainly, if you can produce content that leads the AI to believe that your brand is the answer to whatever the question your customer is asking, that's probably a step in the right direction. I'm sure there will be a lot more content and advice about that coming out in the future. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for attending. This isn't all doom and gloom. There's some real opportunities here. If you pivot early, I think you'll be in a much, much better position than your competitors to capitalize on this massive shift in how people seek information and how marketers use content to get ahead. As always, please do follow us on LinkedIn if you haven't, and we'll see you next month.